If you don't get these things right, you may spend 20 hours doing something of no weight. And somebody may spend 1 hour or maybe 30 minutes doing the most important thing, spending less time for the most important and more time for the least important. And when you do that, you may then come up saying, I have no time, I am overwhelmed, I'm doing so many things, and I don't know how to balance them. How can you say your business is an interference? Or ministry is an interference to your business, or your wife is an interference? The only way something will become an interference is when the priorities are wrong. You would know what is most important to you. If you get the first things right, everything else will fall into place.
This profound message by Dr. Mensa Otabil, delivered at the Alpha Leadership Conference, explores the principle of balance in life through the lenses of purpose, priorities, and pursuits. With scriptural insights and real-world analogies, Dr. Otabil emphasizes how intentional alignment and appropriate weight allocation in different aspects of life, spiritual, personal, and professional, can produce a life of peace, order, and effectiveness. He illustrates the consequences of living by invented or inverted purposes and underscores the importance of living with clarity, not competition. Now, this is the message. Enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe and like the video.
I looked up the definition for balance, and there are several definitions, but this one was quite interesting. It says an even distribution of weight, enabling someone or something to remain upright and steady. An even distribution of weight, enabling someone or something to remain upright and steady. So basically, when we talk about balance, we are talking about properly distributing weight so that you are not drawn one way or the other to your disadvantage, so you can remain upright and steady. In the Bible, there are several words used to describe balance, but the two prominent ones in the Old Testament. And the first is the measuring line. The measuring line. And if you check Ezekiel chapter 40, verses 1 to 3, we read about the measuring line. And you read, it says, in the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year, after the city was captured, and the very same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me. He took me there. In the visions of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me on a very high mountain, and on it toward the south was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. That description, measuring rod, is a description of a balance, a measuring rod. So when the Bible uses the measuring rod as a balance, it talks about checking for alignment, making sure that things are properly lined up, they are in the right order. So the measuring line checks for alignment. Everybody say alignment. All right, so one of the things we have to be looking for to achieve balance is to have alignment in our lives. Things must fall in the right line. The second object that is used for balance in the Old Testament is the weighing scales. The weighing scales. And we know that popular verse in Daniel chapter 5, verses 26-28. You remember when the king had a visitation, saw a writing on the wall, and verse 27 says, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. So the measuring line is to check alignment. The weighing scales checks weight or importance. So these two objects, the measuring line for alignment, the weighing scales for weight or importance, helps us to determine balance. So practically, to bring balance in our lives, we must do two things. We must determine the importance of things in our lives. What is the weight that we give to various things within our sphere? How do we weight them? How heavy are they? What's the substance? That's the first thing you have to determine. And the second thing you have to do is to put things in alignment, establish order of importance. So you're going to determine weight, and then you're going to bring alignment. Now, once you get these two right, you can bring balance into your life. And remember, balance is not keeping everything at the same level, because everything cannot be at the same level. Now, most of you who are a bit into music, I'm sure have equalizers in your sound system. And these days you can even have them on your iPad to equalize sound. When you want to equalize sound with an equalizer, you don't put all the knobs on one line. Is that what you do? No. Some goes up. If you want to hear more bass, you raise the bottoms. If you want to hear more treble, you raise the heights. Now, you work those weights so that you can get the sound that is comfortable to the ears. In the same way, if you want balance in your life, you don't put everything on the same level. You're going to put some things higher than others, because some have more weight than others. And then you're going to align them. You're going to align them. You're going to establish an order of importance. Now, for us Christians, there are several things we're trying to align. And just looking at the profile of the people here, you're looking at your relationship with God, your Christian life, personal Christian life. You're looking at marriage, husband, wife, children. You're looking at your work. And in this sense, for most of you, your work is both vocational and professional. Vocational is your ministry work, and your professional work as an accountant, doctor, lawyer, whatever else you're doing, because most of you are bivocational. So there's God, there is your family, there is your work, ministry work, non-ministry work. Then you're looking at things like your health, you're looking at entertainment, you're looking at fun, and all these activities that come into your life. How do you weigh them? What is important? How do you determine which one should get priority and which one should not get priority? Now, I'm not going to answer that for you, because for each one of us, we have to weigh them differently. There will be some general rules as to what should weigh more than others, but each one of us will have to find our weighting system. We'll have to determine it for ourselves. And what I'm going to try to do today is to point you to some general principles that can help you to determine which one is more important and how should I align them. And maybe afterwards I may recommend something about which one, how the alignment should be. Now, to achieve balance, there are three things we must get right, or three things we must consider. The first is purpose. Let's say that together. Purpose. Okay. The first is purpose. Second is priorities. Let's say priorities. And the third is pursuits. Let's say that together. Okay, pursuits. All right. So purpose, priorities, and pursuits. So what does that mean? Purpose is what your life is all about. Purpose is what your life is all about. It's the reason why things exist. So in order to determine balance, we have to establish the purpose for things. Purpose for our lives, purpose for the things in our lives. The second thing we have to do is to establish priority. Priority basically is what is most important. What is most important? Once you establish what is most important, you would know how to distribute your time and your affections. Your time, your affections, resources. Which one would you feel strongly for? Which ones do you not feel strongly for? Pursuit is what you seek to accomplish. What you seek to accomplish is your pursuit. Somebody went to France today. Okay. Now each one of us is pursuing something. We are either running to something or running from something. But we're always pursuing something. And we are pursuing them with various levels of intensity. If we don't get our purpose right, we cannot establish priority. And if we don't establish the right priority, you're going to pursue the wrong things. Now, when people say normally that they don't have time, it's always relative. The question is, you don't have time for what? Because we have time. I've never seen any human being who has no time. Have you? Have you met any human being who was born into a timeless zone? Each one of us was born into time. Each one of us has 24 hours a day. Each one of us has 7 days a week. Each one of us is going to have 365 days in a year. The earth is still going to revolve around the sun in 365 1/4 days. Nothing we do can stop it. The sun is going to rise, it's going to set. So we have time. Let's say that together. Say, I have time. All right, so all of us have time. The question is, what do you have time for? It's not whether you have time or not, but what you have time for. And what you have time for is determined by what you are pursuing. What you are pursuing is determined by what your priorities are. What your priorities are is determined by the purpose. If you don't get these things right, you may spend 20 hours doing something of no weight. And somebody may spend 1 hour or maybe 30 minutes doing the most important thing, spending less time for the most important and more time for the least important. And when you do that, you may then come up saying, I have no time, I am overwhelmed, I'm doing so many things, and I don't know how to balance them. Just to put things in perspective, I am a pastor. Pastor Tola explained that to you. I'm a pastor. I pastor a local church. Run into a few thousands of people, but that's my local assembly. Apart from that, I oversee International Central Gospel Church. Most general overseers do not pastor local churches, but I am a local church pastor as well as a general overseer. I oversee over 800 churches under our ministry. And so I have several pastors, hundreds of pastors that I oversee. Apart from that, I am a chancellor of Central University, our university, and I'm actively involved in managing the university. I spend time there at the university working, not only in management. Sometimes I even get into the technical academic work there. Apart from that, I ran a consultancy. So I ran my business. I'm chairman of a bank. I'm chairman of a pharmaceutical company. I serve on several think tanks. I travel all over the world preaching, and I'm here in Lagos preaching as well. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Hopefully I'll be a grandfather very soon. and several things. I do several things. Several things. The question people ask me always is, how do you find time to do all of these things? I work out, I jog, I keep my body fit. How do you do all of that? How do you find time for all of that? It's not difficult. Once you can get purpose, priorities, your pursuits will be right. You would know what is most important to you. If you get the first things right, everything else will fall into place. It's not hard at all. It's not a burden. I don't feel rushed. I don't feel hurried. I don't feel my life is on a treadmill. I have to always keep up. I don't keep a diary taking to do. No, I live a very relaxed, easy life simply because of balance. You know what is weighty and what is not weighty. All right. So, let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 29. Ecclesiastes chapter 29. Very interesting verse of scripture. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 29 says, "Truly, this only I have found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes." Very interesting verse. You know, there are verses in the Bible I read and I wonder, how did they find their way in the Bible? Truly, this only I have found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. Other versions would say inventions. They've set up very many inventions. The three things I want you to note in this passage. First is what I call the intended purpose. The intended purpose. God made man upright. The intended purpose is what God has in mind. That's God's intention. That's the original idea that necessitates the making of a thing. And everything God has a definite purpose. It has a definite intention. The universe was put in place for a definite purpose. The earth is where it is for a definite purpose. The human race was created for a definite purpose. You were brought into this earth for a definite purpose. And purpose is not in the created thing. Purpose is always in the mind of the originator, the one who created you. So marriage has a purpose. Ministry has a purpose. The question we have to ask is, what is my purpose in life? What am I here for? What does God want my life to be used for? That's what I call the intended purpose. The intended purpose. But then there is also, according to the verse, the invented purpose. Invented purpose. That is what man does with God's purpose. What you have invented for yourself. Not intended, but this is the invented purpose. To invent is to make up something. God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes, or they've invented many schemes. So let me give you an illustration. This pulpit has an intended purpose. It has an intended purpose. The intended purpose is that it provides a structure to hold the documents that a presenter uses. And in this case, the Bible or a notebook. That is the intended purpose. However, when I'm really upset with you, I can lift up this pulpit and I throw it to hit your head. Now, that's not the intended purpose. That is the invented purpose. I've found a new use for the pulpit, although that is not what it was originally intended for. So, I can use this pulpit for several things that I can invent. And I can find 30 invented purposes, but there's one intended purpose. Are you following me? So many times, what we have to do is very simple. But what we create out of it is a lot. The invented purpose, many times, is far more than the intended purpose. Then the third thing I want you to note is the inverted purpose. That is when purpose is turned upside down. This happens when we use something for the opposite of what the maker intended. So really, when I use this pulpit to hit your head, I have not just invented, but I have inverted. I've turned it upside down. Instead of it being a place of blessing, it's become a place, something for bullying. All right. So, let's go through that. There's the first one is what? Intended purpose. Number 2. And number 3, inverted. Okay. Now, for all your life, for my life, for your life, there is an intended purpose. Then there is what we invent ourselves. And then sometimes we totally subvert the purpose of God. There is a character in the Bible that is it's one of the interesting characters in the Bible. His name is Samson. When Samson was born, there was a purpose for him. And it's stated in Judges chapter 3 verse 5. It says, "For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son," that is Samson's parents, "and no razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines." So Samson was conceived prophetically. Now, I was not born prophetically. I don't think my father heard from God or my mother heard from God. I think they heard from something else, but not from God. And I was born. And, but Samson, they heard from God. Parents heard from God. Mom heard from God. Dad heard from God. And he was born. And they heard what his purpose was, and they told him what his purpose was. He was going to fight for God. But when you look at Samson, although his purpose was to fight for God, he decided to invent his own fights. And when you read the story of Samson, he fought, but almost every battle he fought was not for God. He fought for himself, fought for women, fought to redeem his reputation. I think the only last battle he fought was the one for God. That's the battle he died in. But almost every other battle he fought it for himself. But he still had his strength. He still had the anointing. He still had the capacity. But he invented new uses for his strength. And it tells us that sometimes even men of God can invent purposes for themselves. They can do things that God has not told them to do. And when you do things God has not told you to do, life becomes weighty or heavy or difficult. Now, the reason all of that happens is because, let's face it, all of us are trying to make a living, whether for God, for ourselves, for our spouses, for our children. Pastor Tola told us a fabulous story about crossing lines. Phenomenal story. But you also realize that in that story, he was fighting for a better opportunity for himself. It's not wrong to fight for a better opportunity for yourself. We do that. We fight so we can live a better life. We fight so our children will live a better life. We fight so that things will be better. Those are important, legitimate fights we get into. But sometimes those fights can also lead us away from the things that really bring meaning to our lives. So look with me to Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13 and 14. It says, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things that are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Very interesting. I want you to look at verse 13 again. "But this one thing I do, forgetting the things that are behind, reaching towards the things that are ahead." Two things: forgetting the things that are behind, reaching for the things that are ahead. For each one of us in our pursuits in life and what we are running for, there are two things that influence how we run our lives. First, what pursues you? What is running after you? These are the things that are behind you and they're running after you. Everybody is running from something. Everybody is running from something. When Pastor Tola told his story, he was running from something. He was running from poverty in his family. His mother raised 10 children, single woman. Now, when you have come from a situation like that, you're running from something. And what you're running from is as important as what you're running towards. I learned that lesson years ago when I was a little boy, and we used to pluck mangoes from a neighbor's house illegally. I choose to say that we were just acquiring mangoes, but it seems like we were stealing. And from the neighborhood I came from, when the mango shows any little sign of ripe, we have to bring it down. Because for some of us, that's lunch and supper. So there was this man who had a big, nice house. He had a fence of thorns, a thorn bush around it. And he had a mango, I think two mango trees. And he kept the mangoes there. They would ripe and be a temptation. Now, you don't live in that neighborhood and just let your mangoes ripe. You are causing us to sin. So the mangoes will get ripe, and he waits till maybe weekend, and he will pluck them, do whatever he wants to do with them. But this man would go to work and leave his house. And when he goes to work, then we go to work on his mangoes. So we did that for a while, and we didn't know the man had a dog. I think he used to keep the dog somewhere, but one of these days we went, and the dog was out. So we heard the bark of the dog, a big woof. And the dog started running, and all of us started running out from the mango tree. But then we were caught by the fence. Some ran through the gate, but I was directly in front of the fence. And so I came across the fence, the bush, and I found myself on the other side. I found myself. Now, I'm not sure what happened, whether it was a miracle, whether I was transformed or transfigured, but I found myself on the other side. But afterwards, my friends told me the story, and they were awed by my athletic ability. They didn't know I could jump that high, but they said the dog was right behind me, and before they could say jack, I had jumped that thorn bush and I was on the other side, and everybody was clapping for me. Wow, we didn't know you could jump. I don't remember I jumped, but I remember I was on the other side of the bush. Now, when something is pursuing you, it accelerates your movement. It makes you run very, very fast. So Paul is talking about the things behind us. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is pursuing me? Many times it's your fears, family experiences, expectations, fears from our past failures, childhood experiences, experiences of your fathers, your parents, your mothers. It can be things you saw happen to people around you. All these can produce fears in our lives. Part of my pursuit in life is I'm trying to run away from my family story as possible. Because where I came from is not good. So part of my drive in life is fuel by what's running after me. My fears. I don't want to end up where my parents brought me. I don't want to be to my children what my parents were to me, because life was too much of a struggle. And you don't want your children to go through the same thing. Although it teaches you some lessons, you wonder, can't we learn these lessons a bit easier? So the things behind us, our fears, we're all afraid of something. Our faults, personal weakness, limitations. Very early in life, each one of us is going to know that we're not perfect. Pretty soon, you're going to know you're not the smartest kid in class. You're not the best footballer in the neighborhood. You're not the best runner in the school team. So, you're going to know that you have limitations, your faults. And part of what we do in life is trying to overcome those faults. So we're running from our fears, we're running from our faults, and we're running from our failures. Past mistakes, past sins. These are the push factors of everybody's life. The push factors. Your fears, your faults, your failures. They are the push factors. So when you find somebody who goes to work and works for 16 hours a day, it's not simply because they love their job, but they're running from something. The human being is not normally designed to work that long. So if you're working 16 hours, you're working 20 hours a day, you spend all your time on the job, or you spend all your time out of the home, out of the family, it's not because you love your job so much. And even if you're a pastor and you spend all your time in church, it doesn't really mean you love God so much. Maybe you're running away from your wife. Or you're running away from your children. You run away from something. I used to work with somebody like that. This guy could stay in the office for hours. And when the office closes, his lights are on. Working and working and working. And everybody say, oh, what a hard worker he was. You know, he stays overtime and he's working extra hard, you know, and he doesn't even ask for overtime, and he gives all he has to the work. We later realized he had a horrible marriage. He was afraid to go home. It had nothing to do with meeting deadlines. It all had to do that he is running away from something. So you have to figure out, what is running after me? What am I running away from? Because that will determine your pursuits. Remember I said purpose, priorities, and pursuits. If you're going to balance your life, you have to do some serious introspection. It's not about time management, having a calendar and putting time to activities. No, it is checking your whole composition as a human being. What am I running from? Maybe you failed. Maybe when you were a kid, they told you you were too slow, you were a failure. Your older brother was smarter than you. Your younger brother is smarter than you. Older sister is smarter than you. You're not handsome enough. You're not beautiful enough. So you spend the rest of your life running from something. And believe you me, it can distort the way you manage the rest of your life. If you don't fix that, no calendar can fix you. Right. So, first you have to figure out, what am I running away from? Secondly, what am I running towards? One is pushing you, the other is pulling you. What are the things you're running towards? The things you're running towards could be your hopes, dreams, aspirations in life. For most of us, it's something that has been there for almost a long time. You know, one of the things I've come to realize is human beings, we don't change much. Your adult aspirations are the same aspirations you used to have when you were a kid. Your hopes, when I grow old, I want to be so and so. I want to achieve that. I want to prove this to this person. Your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, your happiness. We're pursuing happiness. The Americans say that is one of the fundamental pursuits of man. Pursuit of happiness, finding peace and perfection in your life. And the third is the pursuit of your heritage. How you want to be remembered. Your place in history. So, each one of us is pursuing something. We're pursuing a hope, our happiness, and our heritage. Now, if you put these two together, what is pursuing you and what you are pursuing, you can figure out why you do what you do. So if, for example, somebody says, well, I'm a pastor, but, you know, I don't have time for my wife, I don't have time for the children. I'm not going to say, how do you spend your time? I'm going to ask you, what's important to you? What are you running from? What are you running towards? When my children were younger, I was carrying similar responsibilities as I do now. Definitely not as large as they are now, but similar. Still a pastor, still a general overseer, and still doing all kinds of things. But I had time when I had not traveled. I was not traveling. to be with them in the evenings, to go through their homework, sign their homework, meet their teachers, discuss their schoolwork, get to know who their friends were, and still be general overseer. You say, well, how do you find time for that? Well, why do I not find time for that? Find time for my wife, spend time talking, chatting, getting to know her more, getting her to know me. We spend a lot of time together. I spend more time with my wife than any other person on this planet. How do I find time for that? There is time. How do you find time for Chelsea? How do you find time for Manchester? The busiest people on earth still find time for basketball, for baseball, for football, for golf. It's not lack of time. It's what is weighty in your life, what you are running towards, what's running after you. If you don't fix those properly, if God gave you 48 hours in a day, you still use your time for what you consider most important. There are some pastors, if you give them a day off, they'll still be out. If it's a public holiday, they'll still not spend time with their wife and children. So it has nothing to do with lack of time. It all has to do with what is important to you. And let's face it, some of us have not developed the skills of being around children. I know people who feel very awkward around their children because they don't know how to play with kids, they don't know how to converse with kids, they don't know how to make friends with their kids. Their whole life is hierarchical, authority, command. After they issue commands, there's nothing else to do. There's no conversation. And if you don't know how to make conversation, you can't be around kids. Because your children want to talk. They want to ask questions. They want you to participate in their world. Especially when they are very young. But if you haven't mastered that, then no amount of time will help you. So the point I just want to get across to you is it's not about time management. It's not about managing time. It's about managing what is important to you. It's about determining what makes you run, what is pursuing you, and what you're pursuing. If you fix it right, yes, there's a space for time management to get a calendar and your to-dos and so on and so forth and get it right. But those are very mechanical and they can easily be done. What is hard to do is to determine what is important. So in my own hierarchy, my relationship with God is number one. It's what I put weight on. That's my number one. The second important weight is my relationship with my wife. Now, I'm not saying that should be your weight. I'm just telling you this is my weighting system. God, and by God I mean my time of prayer, of Bible study, of communion with God, of living for Him, of personal dedication, of spiritual formation. That's number one. Because it is out of that that I draw all my relationships. I will not commit adultery, not because my wife is the most beautiful woman. I'm smart enough to know she's not the most physically beautiful woman on the planet. I will not commit adultery because of that. I will not commit adultery because I want to live for God. That's my number one reason. Once I fix my relationship with God, everything else will be in order. My wife's state has nothing to do with my holiness. My holiness is unto God, not unto my wife, unto God. That she comes secondary. So whether she's in a good mood or in a bad mood, I'll still live for God. Whether she's beautiful or not beautiful, I'll still live for God. Whether she deteriorates physically or not, I'll still live for God. It has nothing to do with what she wears or how she paints her face. It all has to do with my relationship with God. If I fix that well, then I will be faithful to my wife. Not because of her, but because of God. So, number one is God. Number two, my wife. Number three, my children. Number four, my church. And other things will follow. The church is number four on my hierarchy. It's not number one, it's not number two, it's not number three. I love my wife more than my church. I love my children more than my church. Because I'm supposed to love my wife as Christ loved the church. That's a superior love than the one I love my church. I didn't die for them. I wasn't crucified for them. And I'm not going to allow them to crucify me. The reason my children are higher than my church is because if I don't know how to run my home, I have no legitimacy to run the house of God. So I gain my legitimacy to love my wife from the love of God. The legitimacy to love my children because of their mother. The legitimacy to love my church because of the way I love my children. That's my priority. If I take good care of God's church, then He will give me further responsibilities. Then I can be chancellor of a university. So I'm not going to let that be more important than pastoring the church. Because I'm chancellor of a university because I was faithful pastoring a church. I'm general overseer because I'm pastoring a church. I'm faithful in little things. God has given me much. You don't let God's promotion replace your priorities. So, if I get my priorities right, then my time allocation will follow suit. I'm going to spend more time building myself spiritually, then time with my wife, then time with my children. I used to tell the children when they were younger, before you came, we were. And after you leave, we are. You go and marry your husbands and your wives. And when I say, hey, how are you doing? So, you know, my wife says, my husband says. So, if my wife says she wants time with me, you're on your own. Because I'm going to be stuck with her for more time than any other person on this planet. If I don't know how to converse with her, what a miserable life I would have when all I have is her. So we sit, you know, because let's face it, how long are your children going to be with you? 25. By the time you start childbearing, in the next 25, 26 years, all of them will be out. Then you have another 30 years. What are you going to do with it? Go on crusades? Go and save the world? And that's why some people are just out there saving the world, preaching, casting out demons, because they don't know how to converse with their wife. Now the devil is in trouble. Go home. Talk to your wife. Build your home. And build your ministry. Build your life. So what should be our highest pursuits in life? What should be number one? Number two. Philippians chapter 3 verse 12 says, not that I have already attained or am already perfected, but I press on that I may lay hold of that for which Christ Jesus has also laid hold of me. The first thing, in my estimation, that we should really pursue for is to know yourself as God knows you. Paul stated that was his number one pursuit. Not to win the world for Jesus. He didn't say this one thing I do to preach to the whole nations of the world. No, he says this one thing I do. Forgetting the things that lie behind, I press on to the upward call of Christ. I want to know myself as God knows me. That's what you want to do. Self-knowledge. Getting to know who you are, knowing your strengths, your limitations, your weaknesses. Get to know why you do what you do, why you get upset, what excites you, what encourages you, what demotivates you, what inspires you. Do you know yourself that well? Do you shock yourself? Do you do things that you never thought you would do? If you're doing stuff that you never thought you would do, then you don't know yourself. Get to know yourself the way God knows you. Having the mind of Christ concerning your life. The second high pursuit is to be what God wants you to be. Be what God wants you to be. There's pressure on us to be so many things. To be what our parents want us to be, what the culture wants us to be, what our friends want us to be. What kind of person are you going to be? And there's pressure, even in ministry. Because you're going to hear your friends have things you don't have. Send your children to schools you can't afford. And if you don't get your priorities right, you're going to start pursuing what your friends are pursuing. My friend sent his child to school in London. I'm going to do the same. His children are going to school in the US. I'm going to do the same. He's got that nice car. I'm going to do the same. He bought a house. I'm going to do the same. If that becomes your priority, if that becomes your priority and your pursuit, you live a very sorrowful life. And I've been around in ministry enough to see people pursue things that God hasn't told them to pursue. They run races God never told them to run. They build things God didn't tell them to build. Some build churches the size just to compete. And after they build it, it's empty. And in doing that, they pierce themselves with a lot of sorrows. They abandon what is important. They abandon important people in their lives and pursue all kinds of things simply because they are not pursuing God. They're pursuing to compete. have to desire to be more and more like Jesus. That means Jesus becomes our example. His holiness, his gentleness, his forgiveness, his authority, his sense of mission, his love for people, his spiritual habits. These are the things we must acquire to press towards perfection in all that we do. That becomes our pursuit. Once you start fixing your life that way, you'll find the right balance. You'll find the right balance. You would know what is important. You will know some things you would never do. You will not be threatened by other people's success. You will not live your life by imitation. I'm going to end with a reading from 2 Samuel. It's a very long reading, but I just felt I should read all of it. 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 19 to 33. It's a story of a man called Ahimaaz. Ahimaaz was a very fast runner. 2 Samuel chapter 18, 19 to 33. This is after Absalom had died, and somebody had to send a message to David. It says, then Ahimaaz the son of Zadok, Zadok is a priest, so this is a pastor's son, said, let me run now and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him of his enemies. But Joab said to him, you shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day. But today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to the Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. And Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said again to Joab, but whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. So Joab said to him, why will you run, my son, since you have no news ready? But whatever happens, he said, let me run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the two gates, and the watchman went up the roof over the gate to the wall, lifted up his eyes and looked, and there was a man running alone. Then the watchman cried out and told the king, and the king said, if he is alone, there is news in his mouth. And he came rapidly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, there is another man running alone. And the king said, he also brings news. So the watchman said, I think the running of first is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. The king said, he's a good man and comes with good news. So Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, all is well. And he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king and said, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. The king said, is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, when Joab sent the king's servant and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. And the king said to him, turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. Just then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, there is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you. And the king said to the Cushite, is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man. Then the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he wept, he said, thus, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Now, very interesting story concerning a pastor's son, Ahimaaz. There is a message to send to the king about the death of Absalom. It's a very delicate assignment, because everybody remembers that when somebody went to tell David about the death of Saul, it didn't end well. So Joab chooses a man, and he tells the Cushite, go and tell the king what you have seen. Then Absalom, he had seen Ahimaaz, he had seen nothing. But he has speed. He knows how to run. And he says, I want to run. Joab said, not today. You haven't seen nothing. You have no message. Don't run. And he says, I want to run. He says it 3 times, I want to run. So he says, run. So Ahimaaz starts running, and he outruns the man with the message. And he arrives And David asked him, what did you see? He says, well, I saw a crowd, I saw a tumult, but I think something is happening. And I like what David told him, stand aside. There are people who are running so fast, and God is going to tell them one day, stand aside. Because you run on an errand you were not sent. You're building what you're not told to build, running what you're not told to run, saving what you're not told to save. You're doing it because everybody is doing it. Everybody has it. Everybody says that's how it's done, so you're doing it. The reason why people are piercing themselves with sorrow, can't balance their lives, especially people who say they are working for God, is because they're just running. They're just running. Just running. The other guy ran, so I'm going to run. And I've seen a lot in ministry. People who pursue all kinds of stuff they were not told to pursue. But they saw somebody doing it. They couldn't just leave it alone. And that's why people sometimes accumulate titles to themselves, pursue things, run for things, and in the process, they leave the most important things behind. There are people running for ministry, they've left God behind. There's so many things people are doing that God is not in it. It's a great building, but God is not in it. It's a great project, but God is not in it. It's a great project, but they've hurt their wives in achieving their goals. A lot of pastors' wives, I suppose husbands too, if you talk to them about their husbands, the pastors, the testimony would not be good. How can your wife not trust you? And you expect God's people to trust you? How can you say you love the congregation more than your wife? How can you say your wife is an interference in your ministry? How can you say your business is an interference? Or ministry is an interference to your business? Or your wife is an interference? The only way something will become an interference is when the priorities are wrong and the weight has not been measured well. But if you measure everything well, everything will fall in the right place. It's possible to do 50 different things very successfully. Very successfully. To live life without haste. To live life at peace, at rest in your soul. Yes, be intense about what you have to do, but be at peace. That's what Christianity is about. The peace of God which passes all understanding. Keeps our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. So, how do you find balance? Fix your purpose right. Fix your priorities. Check what you are pursuing. If you want a recommendation, let your personal relationship with God be number one. Your relationship with your spouse be number two. Relationship with your children be number three. Relationship with your church be number four. Relationship with your business, number five. Then you can work it down to all other relationships. Time allocation. Now somebody is going to say, well, if I do it that way, then I may not even be successful in my business or in the church. One of the things I said was that pressing towards the mark is seeking for perfection in every area of your life. Being a master. And it doesn't, when you're a master over any area, it doesn't take too long to achieve what you want to achieve. For most of the roles I play in life, they involve two things. Either teaching, which is my primary gift, or managing, my secondary gift. In management, my number one job is to make decisions. So, in most positions I occupy, I only make decisions. I don't do the brainstorming and so on and so forth. I sit at meetings, people present options, and I ask the right questions. So one of the skills I have developed is to ask the right questions. So I may not know the subject. I'm not a finance person, I'm a chairman of a bank. But I'm able to make intelligent decisions because I ask the right questions. And when you ask the right questions, pretty soon I get a picture of what it is and I can navigate my way and say, this is the best way, that's the best way, do this, do that, don't do that. And where I don't have competence, I'm smart enough to hire people because I'm in a position to. The higher you go, the smarter you become. You work with your strength. And I'm constantly working in a situation where I don't have to spend too much time making a decision. And if hiring somebody will shorten my time frame, I will hire somebody so I can balance my time properly. I can't hire somebody to love my wife. It may end something somewhere else. I can hire somebody to love my children, but I can hire somebody to run a business for me or to handle something in the church. I can delegate that. But the things I can delegate worshiping God, I can delegate my wife, loving her, and I can delegate loving my children. These are the non-negotiables in my life. And whatever I do in life, I'm going to save time from the things I can delegate so I can invest my personal time and physical presence in the things I cannot delegate away. I trust that if you're able to fix your own priorities, you will be able to make a balance of your life.
Otabil defines balance as the even distribution of weight that allows us to remain upright and steady, not just physically, but across all areas of life. It's about ensuring no part of our lives pulls us so heavily that we lose our footing. This isn't a call to treat everything equally, but rather to recognize where weight belongs and adjust accordingly. We're urged to think of balance as intentional structure, placing energy where it counts most so that we stay grounded. If things feel chaotic or overwhelming, the message challenges us to ask whether we've misallocated our attention or values. Balance becomes less about multitasking and more about wise, thoughtful distribution. It's a call to live with proportion, not pressure. Otabil uses two scriptural tools to illustrate balance: the measuring line and the weighing scales. The measuring line, as seen in Ezekiel, speaks to alignment, ensuring our lives are structured in the right order. It challenges us to examine whether things line up with God's design or whether we're misaligned in priorities and choices. The scales, drawn from Daniel, measure weight, how much significance we assign to the elements in our lives. It's not about quantity but value. Combined, these metaphors urge us to ask, are things both rightly placed and rightly valued? That's the heart of true balance. We're taught that achieving balance requires mastering two actions: weighing and aligning. First, we must evaluate the significance of everything in our lives, our relationships, responsibilities, and pursuits. Not everything should carry equal weight. Some things are heavier with meaning and must be treated as such. Others, though loud or urgent, may be lighter and less deserving of attention. Second, once we've identified what truly matters, we need to place things in the right order. Otabil likens this to using an audio equalizer, not keeping every setting at the same level, but adjusting each based on its role. Similarly, we're urged to arrange our lives in a way that reflects true importance, so the result is harmony, not chaos. Balance, then, isn't sameness. It's structured variation that makes life sustainable and sound. Otabil lays out a triad that serves as the bedrock of a well-balanced life: purpose, priorities, and pursuits. Purpose defines what our life is about. It's the reason anything exists in the first place. Without clarity on why we do what we do, everything else becomes unstable. Purpose shapes direction, and without it, we risk spending our energy on things that lead nowhere. From that foundation, priorities emerge, what we choose to value most. Priorities tell us where to focus time, emotion, and resources. Then come pursuits, the actions driven by those values. If we misidentify purpose, we'll misplace our priorities, and in turn, chase after the wrong things. The understanding is clear. To live with balance, we must know why we exist, what matters most, and then chase only what aligns with both. Time, Otabil reminds us, is not scarce, it's constant. Every one of us is given the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The issue isn't lack, but allocation. When we say we don't have time, we're really saying we haven't prioritized something. The real question is not whether we have time, but what we have time for. We're challenged to realize that what fills our schedule reveals our true pursuits. If our priorities are misplaced, our time will naturally follow suit. This message urges us to stop blaming time and instead examine the pursuits that dominate our days. A misaligned purpose leads to misplaced priorities, and these in turn dictate time use. To gain control of our lives, we must first get clear on what actually deserves our hours. We're presented with 3 dimensions of purpose: intended, invented, and inverted. The intended purpose is what God originally had in mind for us, our divine design. It's not something we create, but something we discover. Otabil explains that purpose resides not in the thing created, but in the mind of its creator. Just as a pulpit is meant to hold teaching material, each of us has a specific function rooted in God's intention. The invented purpose arises when we start using our lives for things beyond or beside that original design. We make up new uses, perhaps useful, but not necessarily essential. Worse yet, the inverted purpose is when we actively use ourselves for the opposite of what we were meant for, like turning a pulpit into a weapon. The message is sobering. Even our strengths can be misused when purpose is distorted. We're urged to return to what we were made for and resist the drift toward invention and inversion. Samson's life serves as a piercing example of how divine intention can be buried beneath self-made pursuits. From the womb, his path is prophetically marked. Set apart to begin Israel's deliverance from the Philistines, he's born with clarity, consecration, and calling. Yet, the trajectory of his life veers as he begins to repurpose that divine strength, not for the mission, but for personal revenge, pride, and passion. Otabil points out that Samson still retained the anointing, still wielded power, but what he fought for became detached from God's assignment. Most of his battles served his ego, not his mandate. The sobering implication for us is this: it's possible to be effective, admired, even successful, and still be completely out of sync with divine intent. The warning here isn't just about disobedience, it's about substitution. When we invent our own battles, we may still appear strong, but we've hollowed out our purpose. Only in his final act does Samson's strength return to its rightful use. Until then, his life reflects the tragedy of anointing misapplied. We're made to confront the invisible forces that shape our pursuits, the things chasing us and the things we chase. Otabil shows us that every life is driven by attention, the push of our past and the pull of our desires. On one side are fears, faults, and failures, memories, experiences, and wounds that pressure us forward, not always towards something noble, but away from something haunting. These push factors aren't always visible, but they're deeply potent. Many work relentlessly, not out of passion, but escape, from poverty, from shame, from rejection. Then there are the pull factors, our hopes, dreams, longings for happiness, or the desire to leave a legacy. We chase affirmation, security, and sometimes vengeance, hoping these will give meaning. These twin currents, what's chasing us and what we're chasing, shape every decision we make. Otabil presses us to ask, what's really fueling our ambition? Because if we don't identify both forces, we risk running fast in the wrong direction, propelled by pain and lured by illusion. Mensa Otabil presents his personal hierarchy not as a universal prescription, but as a model to provoke reflection. At the top is his relationship with God, his foundation, his anchor. It's not a compartment, but the source from which everything else flows. It informs his values, tempers his desires, and governs his sense of responsibility. His commitment to spiritual formation, prayer, and integrity isn't framed as duty, but as oxygen, essential for everything else to breathe. Next in line is his marriage, then his children, followed by his church. He makes a sharp distinction. He loves his wife and children more than the congregation he leads. This isn't negligence of ministry, it's the proper weighting of roles. The rationale is clear. Without a healthy home, there's no credibility in public service. He refuses to let leadership, platforms, or external recognition displace the people closest to him. We're challenged here to ask, do our calendars and emotional investments reflect what we claim to value? The hierarchy doesn't just help him prioritize time, it shields him from misplaced sacrifice. We're drawn into two potent passages, Philippians and 2 Samuel, as lenses for measuring pursuit and discernment. In Philippians, Paul urges us to forget what lies behind and press forward toward what lies ahead. This isn't about selective memory, but spiritual propulsion. Otabil shows us that we are either running from something or running toward something. The apostle doesn't speak of busyness, he speaks of intentionality. It's the idea of chasing the very thing for which Christ chased us. That becomes the goal, to know ourselves as God knows us and to be what he intended. Then comes the striking story of Ahimaaz. Eager, fast, but uninformed, he outruns the one with the real message, only to deliver nothing of substance. Stand aside, David tells him. This moment carries a sobering undertone. We can run, move fast, and look impressive, yet lack the substance of a calling. Otabil warns us, many are in motion, not because they were sent, but because others are running. It's not speed, but accuracy that matters. This message urges us to pursue depth over display, divine purpose over crowd-driven ambition, and a life well-ordered over a life simply full. This is the end of the post-message analysis.